In an era where the youth are furiously chasing the early retirement trend, also known as the financial independence movement, countless people are exhausting their labor for diversified investment portfolios. They cut back on every cup of coffee, grind day and night, and pour money into index funds, real estate, and insurance contracts with a fierce belief that diversification will protect them from any unforeseen events. But behind that seemingly wise calculation lies a terrifyingly naive understanding of how the financial system truly operates. Let us turn back the wheel of history to an autumn afternoon in October of 1929. Imagine you are Arthur Blackwood, a 58-year-old man, standing on the porch of your home in a peaceful neighborhood in the state of Ohio. You are the perfect embodiment of a model citizen, a diligent worker who has dedicated over 30 years of your life to a giant steel manufacturing corporation. You have never been late, never violated discipline, and have always obediently followed all the rules laid out by society. The reward for that absolute submission is a rosy retirement prospect manifesting right before your eyes. You possess a savings account worth thousands of dollars at a top-tier reputable bank. A place with solid bronze doors and heavily armed security guards. You do not just stop there, you are a cautious person with vision. You have purchased a series of stocks from leading industrial corporations, advised by a silk-suited broker driving an expensive car. You hold a life insurance policy with a massive cash surrender value, enough to ensure a life for your devoted wife if you were to suddenly pass away. You believe that you have excellently completed the financial game of life. The newspapers daily praise a decade of brilliant development. The economy is booming, factories are operating at full capacity, and you are exactly 24 months away from the retirement finish line. You stand there, take a sip of coffee, breathe in the crisp autumn air, and feel an absolute sense of peace of mind. But that peace of mind is actually just a sedative injected into your subconscious by the system. You are completely unaware that, within the next 36 months, the entire personal financial empire you spent your whole life building will be crushed into dust. This collapse does not stem from you making wrong investment decisions. You did everything right according to society's standards. The collapse comes from a much more cruel truth, which is that the systems you entrusted your faith in, the pillars you considered the most solid, are actually just illusions constructed from debts and empty promises. The pension plan the Steel Corporation promised you will vanish into thin air as the industry falls into a downward spiral of restructuring. The solid bronze doors of the bank will slam shut forever in 1931, burying all your savings inside. Your diversified stock portfolio will evaporate by nearly 90% in value within just a few short months. You will be forced to cancel your life insurance policy, suffering massive penalty fees, just to exchange for a little cash to buy bread to survive day by day. And then, in 1933, upon turning 62, instead of enjoying your peaceful retirement days, you will have to put on ragged work clothes, wandering the cold streets to fight for a menial manual labor job. This is not a personal tragic story. This is a cruel law of elimination of capitalism that, once realized, will haunt you for the rest of your life. Humanity's greatest misconception about preparing for the future is being too obsessed with numbers on paper while forgetting to ask the most core question. That is, what do your assets truly depend on? Every retirement plan designed within the modern financial system is a gamble with time. You are betting that financial institutions, fiat currencies, and derivative instruments will retain their integrity on the day you are old and need them most. During the Great Depression of the last century, a series of retirement mechanisms considered absolutely safe collapsed simultaneously. Not because the people were foolish, but because the mechanisms themselves contained structural malignancies, which only burst when subjected to extreme pressure from the macroeconomic environment. Let us dissect the first pillar, the illusion of safety regarding savings accounts in banks. When you entrust your blood, sweat, and tears to a financial institution, Human psychology often creates a comforting image that the money is carefully kept in a solid safe, bearing your very name, just waiting for you to come and collect it. But the reality of the banking system wears a completely different face. The moment you turn your back and step out the door, the bank immediately takes that money to lend it out. For every dollar you deposit, they create $10 of virtual credit to pump into businesses, real estate speculators, and gamblers in the stock market. Your savings passbook, with its beautifully printed numbers, is not actually money. It is merely a promissory note, a promise from the bank that they will return the money to you someday. This system operates smoothly based on a single psychological assumption, that everyone will never come to withdraw their money at the exact same time. But when public trust is fractured, when fear spreads like an infectious disease, that fragile assumption instantly shatters. Thousands of banks declared bankruptcy in just a few years, and the savings of millions of workers evaporated forever. There was no pity, no compensation, only the cruelty of non-round numbers. You think your money depends on the bank, but the bank depends on debtors. The debtors depend on the economy, and the economy depends on the illusion of the crowd. When the illusion disappears, the entire structure will collapse. Let us continue to expose the second pillar, the massive pensions promised by corporations. For diligent workers like our character Arthur Blackwood, a pension is the ultimate reward, the holy grail of a devoted life. It brings a sense of certainty like mathematical theorems. But the fatal mistake of workers is confusing a legally binding debt obligation with a conditional promise. A corporate pension is not an asset you can keep in your pocket. It is a cash flow extracted from the future profits of an organization run by humans. And organizations can make mistakes, can wither, and can go bankrupt. When the gears of the economy stop turning, the revenues of giant corporations plummet disastrously. To salvage their own survival, boards of directors did not hesitate to discard the sacred promises made to the workers who had dedicated their youth to them. Pension reserve funds were gutted to cover operating debts. White-haired men, who were once promised a peaceful old age, suddenly received cold notices cutting off all their benefits. This is not a spontaneous scam, but how the system is designed. Your pension is only safe as long as the organization behind it remains strong enough to survive. And more importantly, as long as they still feel that keeping their promise to you is beneficial to them. When that benefit disappears, you will become the first burden to be thrown off the sinking ship. Now, we will step into the biggest casino of the economy, which is the stock market. The fact that millions of ordinary workers pour their money into company stocks is always painted as a great leap forward for capitalism, where anyone can become co-owners of giant corporations. The crowd is always brainwashed by a single mantra: in the long run, the market always goes up. In terms of mathematical theory, this is not wrong, but it hides an invisible blade that can end your financial life at any moment. That blade is named timing. Statistics have recorded brutal declines of up to 89% in the value of the entire market within just a few short years. Imagine if you invested a large sum of money right at the peak. Your assets would be left with a mere 11% when hitting the bottom. And that bottom does not recover overnight. History has witnessed periods where the market took over 25 long years just to climb back to its initial value. 25 years is a third of a human life. If you are preparing to retire at the age of 60, do you have enough health and time to patiently wait until the age of 85 just to break even? Absolutely not. The time of retirement is a non-negotiable life or death boundary. When you are old and frail, when you need money to pay medical bills, buy food, and maintain your life, you cannot tell your stomach to wait a few more years until the stock market recovers. You will be forced to sell off those assets at the rock-bottom price of despair. This is exactly the perfect trap of the paper investment system. It forces retail investors to provide liquidity, becoming fat prey for giant predators in the market. You never own real assets, you only own lines of electronic code. And access to them is entirely in the hands of brokerage firms. When these intermediaries collapse, your certificate of ownership is only worth as much as scrap paper. Perhaps you are telling yourself that if paper money and stocks are too risky, then real estate is the ultimate fallout shelter. Land is something you can see, can touch, and it cannot evaporate like electronic numbers. It is exactly this belief that has triggered frantic land fevers all over the country. People buy houses and land using massive financial leverage, believing that the value of these concrete blocks and premises will protect them for the rest of their lives. It is true that land cannot disappear. But its value does not lie in its physical shape, but in its liquidity. When the macroeconomic economy freezes, a series of factories close, and workers lose their jobs, the residential and commercial rental market is also instantly paralyzed. If you are the owner of an apartment building, and your tenants no longer have a dime to pay their rent, what will you use to pay the monthly mortgage debts to the bank? The bank does not care about your difficulties. They only enforce the emotionless terms on the contract. A series of properties will be foreclosed, pushing tens of thousands of families out onto the streets. You want to sell off your assets to cut your losses? There will be absolutely no one to buy them. The credit market has dried up. No one can borrow money. And the few with cash are waiting to buy up your massive assets at a price so cheap it is the ultimate insult. An asset that loses its liquidity is no longer an asset, it becomes an iron shackle dragging you deep into the mud of bankruptcy. The final iron shackle imprisoning human financial freedom is investment-linked life insurance policies. For decades, it has been glorified as an omnipotent financial tool, both protecting lives and acting as an absolutely safe savings book. But there is a fatal loophole that insurance sales agents will never reveal to you. The cash flow that insurance companies collect from you is all thrown into bond markets and real estate mortgage loans. When the debt market collapses, the insurance corporations themselves also stand on the brink of annihilation. The true tragedy occurs when workers lose their jobs and run out of cash. They cannot continue to pay those massive monthly insurance premiums. They are pushed into a corner and forced to cancel their contracts, withdrawing the meager cash left after cruel penalty fees have been deducted. 20 years of penny pinching, 20 years of regular payments, finally liquidated at a dirt cheap price just in exchange for a few meals to get by. Emergency circumstances never follow your retirement plan. When you do not have the right of self-determination over time, you will always be the loser. Now, let us look at the big picture in the most cold-blooded manner. Banks, pensions, stocks, real estate, and life insurance. 5 seemingly independent structures, 5 different promises, yet they collapse together in the exact same historical moment. What is the core reason? Because all 5 of these pillars are deeply plugged into the exact same foundational system. It is a system that demands the credit market must constantly expand. Workers must always have an income, and liquidity must always be abundant. When the macroeconomic engine stalls, all vehicles depending on it become dead machines. The diversification you have always been proud of, putting your eggs in different baskets, is actually just a safe illusion. You are placing all of your baskets onto the same truck hurtling downhill without brakes. In every economic disaster, there is always a fundamental question that needs to be asked. That is, who will be the beneficiary when everything collapses? Wealth never disappears, it merely transfers from the hands of one person to the hands of another. The beneficiaries are never the middle class or diligent retirement savers. The winners are the elite powers holding actual cash, those with access to insider information, and monopolistic organizations backed by the government. When asset prices collapse, they use cash to acquire land, factories, and market share at an unimaginably cheap price. The panicking middle class sells off their assets, providing a massive source of liquidity and cheap labor to serve the wealth-building process of the elite class. This is not a conspiracy theory, but a mechanical truth of the financial power hierarchy system. What happened in the past is not a historical event for us to read for fun. It is a structural blueprint that is still being applied to this very day. Modern pension funds, passive investment accounts, or flashy trading applications on smartphones are all repeating the exact same methods. They are more complex, masked by polished technological jargon, but the core weaknesses regarding dependency remain completely unchanged. Financial safety does not come from how many types of assets you buy or which system you trust. It comes from your ability to answer the most ruthless question: what conditions do my assets truly depend on to exist? If you cannot see through the layers of disguise of financial institutions, if you do not understand the nature of liquidity and credit limits, then you are standing in the exact same position as the worker Arthur Blackwood in the autumn of 1929. You are enjoying your cup of coffee, smiling at a fake clear blue sky, completely unaware that a tsunami has already begun surging from the bottom of the ocean. These are historical analyses and systemic perspectives, absolutely not personal financial investment advice. Every historical upheaval leaves behind different scars. If you are someone awake enough to perceive the truth instead of soothing lullabies, please continue to follow and accompany the channel. Because our mission is not trying to predict the future, but to strip bare the cruel laws of the past, so as to never become blind pawns on the chessboard of the lawmakers.